Hey guys, John here. Got another beginner's video. This one's going to be predominantly about cold water reaction baits. So we're talking jerk baits, crank baits, stuff like that. And just going to run through them, some of the different models, what line, rods to use. That'll help get you a good jump start on things. So stick with me here and we're going to dive right in. Alright guys, the first one we're going to talk about here is an awesome bait for when actually the first two that we're going to talk about here are awesome baits for when that ice first comes off the water, for those of you that have ice. And they work great until that water hits around 55 degrees. And I mean, that's not to say you can't catch fish on them year round. But typically once the water gets up around 55 degrees, I'm throwing something else anyways. I'm looking for a different kind of bite. But the first one is going to be a deep diving jerk bait. Now this one right here is this is one of the Strike Kings, one of KVD's. I can't remember what the hell this one is called. I think this one is Ghost Minnow. I believe is the color on it. It's got green back with a little purple hue in it, translucent, and then some gold up here around the head. Damn cat here. This is an awesome bait. These will get down there in that 7 to 11 foot range. So you're getting it presented to some of those deeper fish that won't come up as shallow to go after a normal diving depth jerk bait. And something like this right here, I'm typically going to throw this on a anything between 6'6" to a 7 foot medium power fast action rod is typically what I'm going to be throwing something like this right here on, with 8 to 12 pound test. When the ice first comes off the water, I'm typically going to be throwing between 8 and 10, because those fish really don't fight that much. They don't really pull. You're pretty much reeling in a wet sock. But once those fish get a little more active, or if I'm going after really big fish, then I'll bump it up to 12 pound test. Another one that works really well when that ice first comes off the water is going to be a Shad Rap. This is a Rapala Shad Rap. This one here in particular is a Series 7. Something like this, because of how light it is, I'm typically going to throw these on a spinning rod, or if you've got a rod that'll cast it, the same rod that you'd use for your jerk bait typically works pretty good. But on a spinning rod, I'm going to throw this on 6 to 8 pound test just to help it get to another, or get down to a deeper diving depth. And this one here is, if I recall, I think this goes down to 9 foot. I may be wrong, it might be 11, I can't remember for certain. But this color right here in particular is a absolute killer in the spring. They call this one here Crawdad, even though it looks more like a shad, but it's a gold color. On my home lake down in Kentucky, the lake I grew up on, this right here was just a springtime killer. One of the first few tournaments that I fished, it was in March. I think it was like March 1st. I got my butt handed to me by a guy throwing this right here. He brought in 20 pounds that day. I had 15, and I was in second place. And I was throwing football jigs and jerk baits, things like that. But I wasn't throwing this small little profile. And like I said, this is a Series 7. The Series 5 is half this size, and it is an absolute fish catcher. But like I said, this is a great bait. I'm gonna throw this on a 7 foot to a 7'2" spinning rod with 6 to 8 pound test fluorocarbon is typically what I'm gonna throw this right here on. Another awesome spring bait, and this one here will come as no shock. This is the Vision 110 jerk bait. I don't recall what this one here is. This one here might be Tennessee shad, I believe is the color. And with a jerk bait, you know, 8 to 12 pound test line, I'm typically going to throw this on a, well, I'll show one to you here in just a moment. One of the rods that I use. Matter of fact, let me grab that now. This is a Cabela's Tournament ZX. Yes, it is dirty, it is scratched, it is wore out, but it still catches fish. This is a great jerkbait rod for that $100 price tag. You can see where I was out throwing a shadow wrap before the ice set back in. And I've got this paired up with a Abu Garcia Revo X Gen 4 in a 6.6 to 1 gear ratio. For me personally, that 6.6, it's not too slow, but it's not too fast that it's going to throw me out of rhythm, and I can it's fast enough I can take up the slack and get the fish in. But this one here in particular is a 6.9 medium. That 6.9, that 6.6 to 6.10. For me anyways, because I'm a fairly short guy, I'm only 7 foot. God, I'm stuck on 7 foot. I'm only 5'7". So this rod right here allows me to work the bait, pretty easily without smacking the side of my boat or smacking the water with the tip of the rod. But I typically throw the jerk baits, like I said, on between 8 and 12 pound test, depending on the diving depth that I want it to go. And I'll throw a jerk bait all the way up till, well, never mind. I'm not going to say that. I'll just say I'll throw a jerk bait till it gets pretty warm. And then, another good one for cold water, and this one right here is a Rapala DT6. This one here is their brown crawdad. I think they call it natural brown crawdad. It dives to 6 feet. I'm typically going to throw something like this on the exact same rod that I would throw a jerkbait on, because something like this right here, I'm typically going to be making fairly short casts, pitching it or casting the targets and things like that. Not to say that I don't put it on a longer rod and make big long bomb casts when I'm just wanting to cover water. But that's the unique part about a crankbait like this, is you can, this little DT6 here, it's got a nice tight wiggle. It's got a little bit of rattle to it, if you can hear that. And this one right here, I've caught, well, not this particular one, but this color, this one in the red crawl, I've caught a lot of fish on it. And one of the rods that I'm really surprised that I've taken a liking to here lately for throwing stuff like this is the Duckett Ghost in a 6'10". I'd had my wife pick this one up for me to throw jerk baits on, but I found that the reel handle is a little bit too long and cumbersome, so it's not going to be seeing a lot of jerk baits. I'll throw a jerk bait on it in a pinch, but I think this one here is going to be my square bill and small crankbait rods. Now with the DT6, I'm going to be throwing it on 10 to 15 pound test, depending on the situation. If I'm throwing to cover, like lay down trees, things like that, I'll probably bump it on up to a 15 pound test, depending on the diving or how deep I need the bait to dive to. Moving on to another really good early spring or early season bait, when the water starts getting a little bit warmer, a lipless crankbait. This one here, I think this one's called Delta Red. This is the Strike King Red Eye Shad. This one here is in 1/2 ounce. These are awesome baits for in the spring when the water gets a little bit warmer. Something like this, I'm typically going to throw it on 15-pound test. I may move up to 20, depending on the situation. If I'm ripping it out of fairly shallow grass, under 10 foot, I'm going to put it on 20-pound test. And I'm going to be throwing that on a 7-foot medium to a 7'6" medium heavy cranking rod on the 7.6. The 7-foot medium is just a 7-foot medium. I think it's a moderate, but it's a full graphite rod. And I've got one here. Make sure I grab the right one. This is the Abu Garcia Veritas. This is the 2.0 with their version of a micro guide, which is actually more of a hybrid. It's not a full micro guide. And there's that. This is the Rapala DT10 in the red crawl, dad. I love that one there for early season. And this one here also paired up with the Abu Garcia. Another really good cold water crankbait, and this one is a standby. Unfortunately, these are the post Rapalas, but a Storm Wigglewort. These have a really good hunting action. Nice wide wobble, so on those days where those fish are getting active and stuff, that's where you're going to want to throw this. Another good one that's a little bit bigger, it's the same basic concept. This is the Spro Mike McClellan Rock Crawler 55. I love these. I throw them over on the Morse Reservoir for those of you that are here in Indiana. I really like these for over there. But those are wide wobbling crankbaits. Another one that I really like, this is the Strike King 1.5 flat. Flat-sided crankbait, nice tight wobble. I mean, this thing right here is a fish catcher. And I'm showing different colors, guys, that I throw. So that's why not all of them are the same color. I'm just giving a brief overview of some of the colors that I throw. Otherwise, we'd be here all day covering every color of each crankbait that I throw. Now on those, I'm typically going to throw those on 10 to 12 pound test. That's the Strike King 1.5, the Spro Rock Crawler, and the Wigglewort. Typically 10 to 12 pound test on a 7'6" medium heavy cranking rod. Such as this is the Abu Garcia Veritas winch series. This is a cranking rod. This one right here, I've got it currently set up with a Lew's. This one is a 6.4 to 1 gear ratio, which is way faster than what I typically throw in the early season. But I'm taking these baits here and covering water with them. That is the reason why I'm throwing them. I'm not throwing them at specific targets. I'm making big, long bomb casts to cover water with them. Moving on to another set of hard baits that I like to throw. And this is when that water starts to warm up a little bit. Not saying that on a day when it's 40 degrees you can't go out and catch them on it. It's all dependent upon that situation. If I'm fishing a pond, I'm taking that guy right there. Strike King 1.5 square bill. But I'm going to work this pretty slow. I'm going to use a 5.4 to 1 gear ratio reel, to slow me down. That way I don't overfish the bait or run it too fast. Another good option, this one here is a, oh crap, I just lost it. This is a Rebel. I think this one here is a We Are, another red crawl. Notice the theme, springtime, depending on what part of the country you're in. But as a general rule of thumb, a red crawl or some kind of red crankbait or a lipless crankbait will get you a couple fish. So far I've only been on 2 lakes that I've never been able to catch a fish off of a red crankbait. But that's some of the baits that I throw in cold water. But tight lines, everybody, and we'll catch you next time.